got to start reining in the spending. We have got to start reining in the spending. We have got to start reining in the spending. We have got to.
Well, explain to me why that enhances your foreign policy credentials.
Well, it certainly does. As Putin rears his head and comes into the airspace of the United States of America, where do they go? It's Alaska.
Do you agree with the Bush doctrine?
In what respect, Charlie?
The Bush. Well, what do you interpret it to be?
His worldview. In what respect, Charlie? As for that VP talk all the time, I tell you, I still can't answer that question until somebody answers for me. What is it exactly that the VP does every day? A vice president has a really great job because not only are they there to support the president's agenda, they're like the team member, the teammate to that president, but also they're in charge of the United States Senate. So if they want to, they can really get in there with the senators and make a lot of good policy changes that will make life better for Brandon and his family. And ultimately, what the bailout does is help those who are concerned about the health care reform that is needed to help shore up our economy, helping the... It's got to be all about job creation, too, shoring up our economy and putting it back on the right track. So health care reform and reducing taxes and reining in spending has got to accompany tax reductions and tax relief for Americans. And trade, we've got to see trade as opportunity, not as a competitive, scary thing, but 1 in 5 jobs being created in the trade sector today. We've got to look at that as more opportunity. All those things under the umbrella of job creation. This bailout is a part of that.
You know, I would hope that that's the case.
But he still has a stake in the company, so isn't that a conflict of interest?
When you see the landscape in the primaries are different than the election. The Tea Party has an enormous amount of power, and so do you. You guys are able, in New Hampshire, your guy won too. I can't even say his name. What's his name up there? What's his name in New Hampshire? Tell me in my ear. Some guy up there won the primary, and you endorsed some governor. All right, nobody knows. His name up there? What's his name in New Hampshire? Tell me in my ear. Some guy up there won the primary, and you endorsed some governor.
It appears Sarah Palin may need to brush up on her American history. She visited the Old North Church today here in Boston, the focal point of Paul Revere's historic ride, but it sounds like she got a bit confused on the details.
He who warned the British that they weren't going to be taking away our arms by ringing those bells and making sure as he's riding his horse through town to send those warning shots and bells that we were going to be secure and we were going to be free. His horse through town, ringing those bells.
Other parts around this great Northwest, here in New Hampshire, you just get it. And I know that you'll all agree that America can't afford another big spender in the White House. Other parts around this great Northwest, here in New Hampshire, you just get it.
I just want to rattle off a couple of the things that insiders say she just simply didn't know. There were real problems with basic civics, government structures, municipal, state, and federal government responsibilities. She didn't know the nations involved in the North American Free Trade Agreement, we're told. Those, of course, being the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. NAFTA, a major campaign issue. That would have been something of a deficit. We're told that she wasn't actually able to name all the countries in North America as part of that debate. And she didn't understand, McCain aides told me today, that Africa was a continent and not a country, and actually asked them, they say, if South Africa wasn't just part of the country as opposed to a country in the continent.
Can you give us any more examples of his leading the charge for more oversight?
I think that the example that you just cited with his warnings 2 years ago about Fannie and Freddie, that's paramount. That's more than a heck of a lot of other senators and representatives did for us.
But he's been in Congress for 26 years. He's been chairman of the Powerful Commerce Committee, and he is almost always sided with less regulation, not more.
He's also known as the Maverick, though, taking shots from his own party and certainly taking shots from the other party trying to get people to understand what he's been talking about, the need to reform government.
So I'm just going to ask you one more time, not to belabor the point, specific examples in his 26 years of pushing for more regulation.
I'll try to find you some and I'll bring them to you. I'll try to find you some and I'll bring them to you. I'll try to find you some and I'll bring them to you.
Some Republicans have said you're not prepared.
Why John McCain tapped me to be a team of mavericks, of independents, as a team member in this, on this new team promising the reform.
Bridge to nowhere.
Yeah. I killed the bridge to nowhere.
I told Congress, thanks, but no thanks for that bridge to nowhere up in Alaska.
But it's now pretty clearly documented. You supported that bridge before you opposed it. You were wearing a T-shirt in the 2006 campaign, showed your support for the bridge to nowhere. You were solidly for it for quite some period of time until Congress pulled the plug.
I was for infrastructure being built in the state.
But you turned against it after Congress had basically pulled the plug on it, and after it became a national embarrassment to the state of Alaska. So do you want to revise and extend your remarks?
It has always been an embarrassment. It's been an embarrassment, not just Alaska's projects, but McCain gives example after example after example.
We're never going to spend $3 million again to study the DNA of bears in Montana.
Governor this year requested $3.2 million for researching the genetics of harbor seals, money to study the mating habits of crabs. Isn't that exactly the kind of thing that John McCain is objecting to?
Those requests through our research divisions and our wildlife departments and our universities did come through that system, but wanting it to be in the light of day, not behind closed doors with lobbyists making deals with Congress.
When you were mayor of Wasilla, you hired a very prominent lobbyist to get Wasilla money.
We did.
Okay.
Speaks to a bigger picture here that certainly scares me in terms of our national security policies. But obviously, got to stand with our North Korean allies.
As I thought about this announcement that I wouldn't run for re-election and what that means for Alaska, I thought about, well, how much fun some governors have as lame ducks. They maybe travel around their state, travel to other states, maybe take their overseas international trade missions. So many politicians do that. And then I thought, that's what's wrong. Many just accept that lame duck status and they hit the road, they draw a paycheck, they kind of milk it, and I'm not going to put Alaskans through that. I promised efficiencies and effectiveness. That's not how I'm wired. I'm not wired to operate under the same old politics as usual. I promised that 4 years ago, and I meant it. That's not Alaska at this time. I'm determined to take the right path for Alaska, even though it is unconventional and it's not so comfortable. With this announcement that I'm not seeking re-election, I've determined it's best to transfer the authority of governor to Lieutenant Governor Parnell. Except, you know, looking back on our founding fathers and...
Who's your favorite founder?
You know, in diverse...
Who's your favorite?
I'll repeat this. Diverse opinion and so much diversity in terms of... you know, George Washington, so he's got to rise to the top. Like millions of Americans, I learned of the tragic events in Arizona on Saturday, and my heart broke for the innocent victims. Journalists and pundits should not manufacture a blood libel that serves only to incite the very hatred and violence that they purport to condemn. That is reprehensible. Okay.